Good evening. Welcome to Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. 3 ministers in the Maldives have been suspended by the Mohammad Muizzu government. This for the rather disparaging and derogatory comments that they made about Prime Minister Modi. They were commenting after the Prime Minister recently visited Lakshadweep, and he tweeted pictures from his visit that happened last week. There is a feeling that Lakshadweep can emerge as a tourist destination that could possibly rival the Maldives. It's still a long way to go, no doubt about it, in terms of connectivity, in terms of the air traffic that needs to be managed there, in terms of just even the facilities that need to come up there. But this could also be a way to try and check the Maldives' growing proximity to China, because the background text in all of this is China and its growing tentacles in the Maldives, including in the current Muizzu government, which came to power just a few months ago, riding on the India Out campaign. Looking beyond the current social media firestorm that has happened because of these comments and the backlash to those comments, is it time in general for India to recalibrate its relationship with the Maldives?
Though we have freedom of expression, that the kind of language that has been used is obviously unacceptable.
Lakshadweep has seen a remarkable 3,400% increase in searches ever since our Honorable PM visited the islands. So this kind of inspired us to build an entire campaign around it. So we are launching Beaches of India.
All right, let's take you through some of these bizarre and frankly downright insulting statements that have been made by top Maldivian politicians. It started with Zahid Ramiz, who is a Maldivian MP. He said the move, and that of course is the move referring to Lakshadweep, the move is great. However, the idea of competing with us, which is Maldives, is delusional. How can they provide the service that we offer? How can they be so clean? The permanent smell in the rooms alone will be the biggest downfall. And that was followed up by Mariam Shunya, who is a suspended minister. She was the junior minister for youth development. She said, "What a clown," referring to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the puppet of Israel, Mr. Narendra Modi, is a diver with a life jacket, #visit Maldives. This from a sitting minister in the Maldivian government. Then there was Malsha, again a suspended minister, who said that India is clearly in a state of emergency and so is the opposition party. Abdullah Majid, who is again a suspended minister in the government, "While I wish success for India's tourism, targeting the Maldives so explicitly is not diplomatic. India faces significant challenges competing in beach tourism, considering our resort infrastructure exceeds their total islands. Plus, your culture of open defecation." So clearly referring to India and to the Prime Minister of India in rather disparaging and condemnable sort of fashion. But the remarks have sparked a firestorm on social media. In fact, actor Akshay Kumar was leading all other celebrities in reacting very sharply on social media to this, and that's part of our Motorola India's Best 5G Smartphones tweet of the day.
Hello, Moto.
This is what Mr. Akshay Kumar has said, and I quote, "Came across comments from prominent public figures from Maldives passing hateful and racist comments on Indians. Surprised that they are doing this to a country that sends the maximum number of tourists there. We are good to our neighbors, but why should we tolerate such unprovoked hate? I've visited the Maldives many times and always praised it, but dignity first. Let's decide to #explore Indian islands and support our own tourism." But the reaction from the Maldivian government, which quickly suspended these 3 ministers, it has totally distanced itself from the comments made by these 3 ministers. But it does show what is ever-changing power dynamics, not just between Delhi and Malé, but there's also the background of Beijing. The power play that's happening between India and China, and Maldives could become a casualty in that emerging regional power play. Now, there is a long track record of India coming to the aid of Maldives. Let's take you through all of that. Maldives, just in the COVID years in 2020, 2021, was the very first recipient of India-made vaccines, the Covaxin. The very first foreign country that got the India-made vaccines during the second wave was the Maldives. India evacuated not just Indian nationals from different parts of the world, but also Maldivians. A large number of them were stuck in China in the initial days of the COVID pandemic. So one of the Vande Bharat flights included Maldivian nationals who were brought back from China. India also sent more than 1,000 tons of fresh water. Remember, the Maldives, the single biggest problem is fresh potable drinking water. India sent 1,200 tons of fresh water during an acute water crisis that happened in 2014. Also, if you go back all the way to 1988, the Abdul Gayoom government, there was a coup against him by the military. He sent out an SOS to the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. He sent a plane full of troops and stopped the coup in the Maldives. This was in 1988. And defense and security cooperation has been on the agenda since 1988 up until this new government, this new president who's come on the India out plank. India has also financed a line of credit, in fact projects worth over $1 billion over the last 10 years. India has helped expand the Maldives' travel infrastructure, whether it is building hospitals, roads, airports, bridges, and of course even educational institutes. For the Maldives, India and Indians contribute the single largest tourism numbers. In fact, in 2023, more than 2.09 lakh Indians visited the Maldives, making India and Indians the single largest nationality of tourists who go to the Maldives. And that brings us to our big debate tonight. Is the anti-India rhetoric and the politics that we're seeing in Maldives, A, ignoring the geopolitical reality, and B, more importantly, is it time for India to recalibrate its relationship with Malé, given the current dispensation there and their perceived proximity to Beijing? In fact, Mohammad Muizzu is on an official visit to China right now, even as we are in the middle of this diplomatic blow-up between New Delhi and Malé.
Hello, Moto.
All right, let me go across to our special guests who are joining us on Brass Tacks tonight. Mikhail Naseem is a member of parliament of the Maldivian Democratic Party. Maria Didi is the former defense minister of the Maldivian government. Dr. Farah Faisal is a former high commissioner of the Maldives to the United Kingdom. Farooq Khan is a former administrator of Lakshadweep. And Rajiv Dogra, former Indian diplomat, is also joining us. Let me start with Mikhail Naseem. You know, this controversy, of course, largely on social media, but the comments that were made, very disparaging, very condemnable comments, made no less than by ministers in the Muizzu government. Surely, all right-thinking people in India and in the Maldives have condemned this. But does the comments sort of betray what is the prevalent thinking in the Muizzu government? And that is, we can expand ties with other countries, we can move closer to China at the expense of the relationship with India.
Well, to be honest, I can't be speaking for the current government. I am an opposition MP. But what we are seeing is very disappointing because as a government, it has not yet issued a formal apology on behalf of the senior officials who have made derogatory remarks and who continue to deteriorate and try to deteriorate the relations we have with India. I think that is a very serious issue, and for the time being, we are seeing that the said ministers have been suspended, but I think that's not enough. I think the gravity of the matter warrants the government to fire them immediately, and that's when we even start speaking further about the matter.
The reason I asked that, and I'm going to ask this to Mariam Didi, who is a former defense minister in the government of Maldives under former President Ibrahim Solih. is it's absolutely disparaging, the kind of comments that have been made by these ministers. Clearly, should they have known better that when you're occupying positions of responsibility, very high offices in public life, you should not be commenting about other governments, other leaders, and important relationships are at stake. Do you think that this can just be blamed on the exuberance of some newcomers into the Maldivian government, or is this far more serious and far more sinister that needs to be looked at by the government of Mr. Mayuzu in a far more hard fashion, if you will?
I don't think they realized the enormity of what they were doing. They haven't really got used to being ministers, most probably, and they are used to being on social media and making a lot of comments about things and not being held accountable for it. What they have to realize is once they become government ministers, they have to be more responsible, and that their Twitter handles are not taken as just social media activists, but that they should act like responsible ministers of the government, and they represent all of us.
Dr. Farah Faisal, if you look at the breakup of international tourist arrivals in the Maldives, last year, the Maldives in 2023, that is, had a little over 1.5 million tourists coming from different parts of the world. Indians were the largest group or the largest nationality of individuals who came to the Maldives. More than 2.09 lakh Indians visited the Maldives in the calendar year of 2023. The second highest was Russia, around that 2 lakh figure, and the third were China, about 1.87 lakh. Why would senior ministers in the incumbent government want to say stuff that is disparaging to the largest group of foreign tourists who arrive in the Maldives? Surely these 2 lakh or 200,000 plus Indians who come there every calendar year contribute to the Maldivian economy in a substantial way. Why would ministers shoot that in the foot?
Absolutely. But before I say anything, let me say that I'm really sorry to, saddened by this shameful episode. And, we are very good friends with India. So as somebody who actually studied in India at one point in time, I'm really saddened to see this happen. About your question, there are two issues at hand here. One is countries or political parties use jingoistic language from time to time when they are campaigning locally. Now, it's problematic, but also at the same time, it's a matter of fact that political parties do that. Now, very often when the leaders do it, the rest of them, they don't understand the nuances. They can't read the room. So they actually feel that this is against a particular country, but in reality, it's against your own government. The India Out campaign, I see personally as very much an attack on President Solih. But these young activists, when they become government ministers, and I'm not saying this as an excuse, I'm just giving an explanation here, is that they cannot make, as Maria said, the transition overnight from being activists on the road into political leaders or junior ministers. But there is also a second bigger issue at hand. And that is, again, very problematic because we have got into this situation where we use very derogatory xenophobic language and it's become commonplace, especially on social media. And this, again, is an issue that we really need to deal with and we need to do better.
Rajiv Dogra, the condemnable language is, to my mind, the symptom of the disease. The disease seems to be there is a section within the Maldivian polity, led, of course, by the current dispensation, who believe that they can grow closer and closer to China, perhaps at the expense of India. In fact, through the election campaign, one of the single point agendas of the Mayuzu government was India out. Now, you could argue that had resonance amongst the Maldivian people, but even after coming to power, they say you temper your views after you come to power. But Mr. Mayuzu chose not to come to India, like other Maldivian presidents have, as his first port of call. He went to Turkey instead. Even now, even in the middle of this firestorm, this social media storm, he is in Beijing on an official visit. He's chosen to go to Beijing before he comes to New Delhi. So, is it this thinking which is the cause of the disease, rather than all of this social media stuff, which is more like the symptom of the disease?
Well, I'm glad the title you chose for your talk as to what happens now and what happens in future is very relevant because we must go into why this is happening only when Moizu's party comes into power. This is not the first time that anti-India activities have gained prominence when his party came into power. As for Moizu is concerned, he's crossed all limits. On the election day, his T-shirt had printed on it, India out. Then when there was a National Security Advisors meeting, which is quite routine between India, Sri Lanka and Maldives, Maldives decided not to send anyone there. One of the first statements he made was, take out all your army personnel, though they were there for aircraft maintenance and as per agreement between the two countries.
Yep.
The other point which we must note is that India did not start it. In fact, India went out of its way to reach some kind of an accommodation even with the new president. Our Prime Minister met him recently.
Yeah.
But all this has had no effect at all. Now I'll come to the major point, the cause of it all. You know, if one minister says something and a young minister, as has been said, then, you know, you can say that it was a slip of the tongue or maybe he didn't mean it, he was misunderstood. But 3 ministers and 1 MP saying it all around the same time is a cause for concern. Is a cause for concern because President has not said anything to admonish them. President has only suspended them. Suspended as against dismissal or removal is a temporary phenomena.
Yeah.
It is used in, you know, bureaucracies and politics all over the world where you wait till the news cycle is over and then you get back into the cabinet. So Maldives is not apologetic about it. That raises the question whether they were doing it to a plan just before Moizu's visit to China. I think that is
So
the
what is your
answer to
connection?
our
Are you
concern.
saying, Mr. Dogra, that this is perhaps done for Mr. Moizu to sort of appease his masters in Beijing in that sense? Is that your accusation?
Absolutely, not just appease, because he doesn't need to appease them, he needs to please them. And that is exactly what he is doing. The thing that should worry us is, why is he going out of his way to annoy us and please China? Because China has been wanting some kind of a base facility in Maldives for a long time.
Yeah.
Almost for the last 10 years or so. So, will he enter into some kind of a confidential agreement during his visit or give them some kind of a promise that yes, you can set up a base there, will provide the facilities or the port at the right time. That will not only affect our shipping in times of crisis, but also raise bigger concerns as to the enormous string of pearls which starts from Djibouti, goes right up to Myanmar, and now may include Maldives also.
Okay. Just give me 1 second. This whole
that
Chinese
is,
projects, I mean, it's like Rajiv Dogra said, it's not a new thing. It had started during the Abdullah Yameen regime from 2013 to 2018. But I do want to bring in Mr. Farooq Khan as well. He's a former administrator in Lakshadweep. The Prime Minister was there just last week. He's tweeted out some of the videos and encouraged Indians to travel more to Lakshadweep. But let's have a realistic assessment, Mr. Farooq Khan. The number of Indians who travelled to Lakshadweep in 2023 was less than 10,000. The number of Indians who've travelled to Maldives, as I said earlier, was over 2 lakh. So clearly, there is a lot of catching up to do. And part of the catching up, yes, is the infrastructure part. There need to be more tourist hotels and resorts and connectivity. Right now, as I understand, no big aircraft can land in Lakshadweep. It is small aircrafts that can land in Lakshadweep. All of this needs to change for those numbers to go substantially up. If at all, the idea is that Lakshadweep can compete with the Maldives.
Thanks for inviting me. To begin with, I would first, commend my friends from Maldives who were very clear in their, reaction to whatsoever their present colleagues in the Maldivian government have been saying. And but I won't leave it at that. Until unless the President of Maldives personally extends an unconditional apology to India and to our Honorable Prime Minister. I don't think any self-respecting Indian would be ready to accept Maldives at all and forget about those 2 lakh of people going there. In fact, they would be ensuring that not a friend of theirs from all those Indians who are settled abroad, any single one of them would go there. Having said that, I would come to what Mr. Dogra had been saying. This is all a sinister design. Like he said that these 3 persons who came out with such a rabid, unsocial and despicable comments about a leader who is identified as one of the tallest leader at the global level, they don't even deserve a reaction from any one of us. But yes, China, what Mr. Dogra has hinted at, this string of pearls is the basic root cause behind these utterances. Now coming to Lakshadweep, it's not that Lakshadweep was in any way in a kind of competition at this stage with Maldives. Lakshadweep would like to have its identity as an exclusive tourist spot maintained forever. It would not like to go the way the Great Barrier Reef in Australia got destroyed by too many visitors, flooding there. Same is happening with so many other places which have beautiful coral reef. Lakshadweep had been, right since the day our Honorable Prime Minister took the reins of office in 2014, immediately a plan was made for development of 10 islands, and Lakshadweep was included in that plan. Niti Aayog was asked to conduct a proper survey and prepare a futuristic plan.
All right.
And Niti Aayog did a wonderful job. And now, like you were mentioning, only 10,000 people visited last year.
Correct.
And the infrastructure there is not there. Well, I would like to bring to your kind notice and through you to all those aspiring to go to Lakshadweep, and thanks to our Honorable Prime Minister's visit to Lakshadweep, a sudden interest has developed.
Yes.
And no thanks to Maldives for that.
Okay, let me go back to the Maldivian politicians. Mikhail Naseem, this whole China contributions or the China debt trap, as of 2022, the total outstanding Chinese debt for infrastructure projects alone was in excess of $1 billion. Maldives' yearly interest payments just to service this Chinese debt is about $90 million annually. Now, this had become a big sort of issue during the Soli regime. The Soli regime tried to curtail its dependence on this Chinese debt trap or this rabbit hole that China was taking Maldives into. But now again, with Mr. Muizu back in Beijing, this whole myth about, the Chinese will build your country, the Chinese will bring you big ticket investments and infrastructure projects, not just the Maldives, other smaller countries are also discovering the lure of this debt trap, only to realize a few years later that economically you're getting doomed.
Well, I think it's important to learn lessons from what has happened to our neighbors, especially look at the case of Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And I think it is important to maintain what presidents before this in our country had maintained, which was a balanced approach, a balanced foreign policy approach, where we understood our strategic interests and where we actually geographically lie. I think that's key in going forward as a nation, and I think we are very welcoming as a country towards all nations, and we do not favor one over the other. But this country, the Maldives, has always maintained its India first policy, not because we were favoring a certain country or we were subjugating in front of a certain country. It was because we are geographically located as India's backyard, and that reality cannot be changed.
No, and despite that reality, most people would say you can't change that reality. I think it was the late Pranab Mukherjee said, you can't choose your neighbors, you can choose your friends. Maria Didi, it's clear that Mr. Muizu is choosing his friends in faraway lands. He's made that flight 3,000-4,000 miles away from Malé, going all the way to Beijing, about 10,000 miles, I'm told, to make one of his first big official visits after assuming office. Now, my point is, this is, ignoring India or insulting India, some would say, because most Maldivian presidents have made India their first port of call. But more than that, the overall tilt of policy from the Maldives in the current dispensation, and this has been there in the Yamin era, it was there in the final years of the Gayoom era, this tilt towards China. Do you think this is going to affect relations between Delhi and Maldives?
I would hope not. Maldives have always had a foreign policy where they are friends with everyone. Now, we cannot deny the fact that geographically, India is closer to Maldives. We are the same, in the sense like same cultures. We are South Asians, all of us. Our palate, what we eat spicy food. Our languages are similar, our ways of thinking, the cultures match. So I think we cannot really impose a relationship on us in that sense. We would always be close to India.
Let me go back to the Dr. Faisal. In terms of the Chinese sort of string of pearls that Rajiv Dogra also referred to, Dr. Faisal, the point is, look at the experience of Hambantota in Sri Lanka under the Rajapaksa regime. They were building this big port. I believe at one point the expense on that port was over $1 billion. And clearly they realized after building it that not enough people want to use that port, there isn't enough commerce passing through that port, and simply sustaining the debt on just interest payments for that port will become almost impossible. Why does the Maldives not want to learn its lessons from Sri Lanka or from Namibia? Many countries around the world have been caught in this Chinese debt trap.
Well, that is true, but I would also like to bring a different perspective to this, because I think what we are doing is focusing on government-to-government relations. India and Maldives, the connection between India and Maldives is multifaceted, multi-layered. It's not just a state-to-state or government-to-government relationship. That is one part of it, yes. But the people-to-people relationship, we cannot discount that. We've grown up with Indian teachers, Indian doctors, listening to Indian music, and we have gone to India to learn, to study, for medicine. So let's not discard that connection and focus just on this state-to-state relationship or government-to-government relationship.
No, but Dr. Faisal, it's precisely why that is worrying, because right now the social media storm that you're seeing, it's Indians who have taken offense at what has been said. I don't think anything has been officially said by the government of India other than, of course, the summoning of the High Commissioner. 8,000 cancellations is what we've been told by one of the leading tour operators associations. This gentleman who represents the Tour Operators Association of India also says he's expecting 250 flights to be cancelled in the next 30 days. Now, the point is that affects the people-to-people ties, right? That should be worrying.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and I can understand Indian sentiments. I'm totally with you on that. I would be very offended if I was Indian. But what I'm trying to say is we have to look at it from all this perspective. This is a 5-year government that's come in. Okay, so they may currently the president of Maldives may be in China, but let us look at the bigger picture. Governments come and go, but the relationship between countries stay. So I think, we need to also focus on that and not just have a narrow focus on the strategic importance of, what's happening in the Indian Ocean. My background's in international politics, but I believe that we need to look at the whole thing when we are looking at India-Maldives relationship and not just concentrate on this part of it alone.
No, the reason why that is of particular concern is because China has done this not just with the Maldives, as Ambassador Dogra was saying, and I'll go back to him on this. Look at the amount of monies they're investing across the South Asian region. CPEC alone, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, is over $60 billion. Of course, there are problems therein. I'm not saying that there are no problems. Hambantota, one project in the southern part of Sri Lanka was being built at over $1 billion. The port of Chittagong is again being built at close to $500 million is what we're being told. Even in Myanmar, the massive hydroelectric projects that are being undertaken is tens of millions of dollars. So the point is, as you said, the string of pearls. Now, many people at one point of time would say, oh, this was hyperventilating, this is just being alarmist, no such thing actually exists. But time and time again, whether it is in Sri Lanka or in Maldives or in Myanmar, the Chinese have been able to sort of do big business with dispensations there in a way that has affected India. Because if the Indian Ocean region is supposed to be India's backyard, then the Chinese are walking all over India's backyard and with big monies. Rajiv Dogra.
Sorry, is it?
Ambassador Dogra, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think Maldives, the reference had been made to people relationship as opposed to the government of the day.
Yeah.
But the fact is that a large number of people in Maldives have voted this government in power, and people don't make decisions after a government has been voted into power. It is the government of the day that makes decision, and unfortunately Mr. Moizu is not friendly or not willing to listen to reason as far as India is concerned. The second thing and more worrying aspect, because of the string of pearls has come in again, and you've given the number of bases and projects that China has had recently over a wide geographical area around India. Now, what is happening today in Red Sea in terms of Houthis attacks on shipping should be a wake-up call for us and for everyone in this region, right up to Japan, because Japan imports a lot of its stuff and exports to countries where China is having a stranglehold through its navy now and in future even more. So I think we have to realize that what Moizu is doing is hurtful for Maldives, but the people of Maldives themselves should realize that there are a large number of people among them who are friendly towards the extremist cause. After all, they've sent their soldiers or their extremist youth to fight with the ISIS. They've also had very intimate contacts with Pakistan in the past and continue to have contacts with Pakistan even now.
Okay.
So it's not a simple matter of one government acting in an anti-India manner, but a matter of a large number of Maldivians acting in concert with in the direction that is not amenable to India.
Okay. I'll give Maria Didi the final word. I don't know if you want to respond to what Rajiv Dogra said about we can't just look at the government to government relationship, because even in the people to people relationship, it is ordinary Indian people who've taken offense to what's been said. Like I said, the government has not formally reacted to the comments made by these three ministers. But I want to close out with the whole China question, because this is the second time the Maldives is facing this. We saw the perils of over-dependence on Chinese investment during the Abdullah Yameen government. Like I said, the debt of infrastructure projects alone was in excess of $1 billion. But despite that experience, why is the Maldives going back almost to that era, like President Moizu now is in Beijing? And I'm sure once we get the details of what infrastructure projects are being unveiled there, it'll almost be like you're going back to 2013 to 2018 when Mr. Yameen was accused of selling off the islands, selling off the Maldives. As Mohammad Nasheed once said, Maldives can't be a debt to equity equation. Just because we are trapped in Chinese debt doesn't mean our land gets sold.
It is too early to tell at the moment. Moise has been in government only for a couple of days, but if we are to go into debt, we would be really worried. Even now, like the signs that we see, so many things that worries us are coming up right now also. And the fact that President Moise thinks, that his ministers' remarks will not reflect on his government is also something that is worrying. He should put some sense into them and tell them that whatever they do, the remarks would be a representative of the government's attitude towards countries.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Those are wise words from the former defense minister. Let's see how this story plays out, whether this will continue to blow up in ways that both countries, at least at the diplomatic and official level, don't want it to spiral out of control. But clearly, the onus is on the Maldivian government and on President Moizu to not just damage control, but perhaps some would say even make it up for these disparaging comments made by some of the more radical elements in his government and in his party. But